You are cute when you're all shaved up.
I'm at a loss for words.
Yeah. Woo. Ooh. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.
Third Degree, the podcast, is brought to you by the Lindstrom Law Firm. For wills, trusts, probate, and business law, call 469-515-2559. That's 469-515-2559. Or visit lindstromlawfirm.com for a free consultation.
Well, hello there, FC Dallas Curious fan. Welcome to another episode of Third Degree, the podcast, and this one would be number 275, kind of a milestone episode of Third Degree, the podcast. Look who's here. It's Dan Crooke. Howdy, Dan.
Hey, I hope you're ready to roll into the MLS transfer window like an Australian breakdancer.
I got the moves, brother. And your hero, my hero, everybody's hero, editor, founder of thirddegree.net, and the original soccer influencer himself, the good Buzz Carrick. Come in, Buzz.
Hey, fellas, how are y'all doing on this lovely Wednesday evening as the trade window screeches to a close?
I am distracted by what appears to be the breaking news that the next U.S. men's national team head coach will be Mauricio Pochettino.
Yeah, has that gone? I saw the one report. Has it gone wide more than that yet?
It's starting to get out. More and more people are starting to claim that this is actually confirmed and happening. By the time people listen to this, maybe it'll be true, maybe not. But I already have people sending me messages asking me what I think about it.
Oh, so this is not that kind of podcast, but what do you think about it?
I think it checks a lot of boxes. I think it'll be good for calming a lot of very nervous people that thought that Cherundolo was the shoe-in hire for the job. But I'm also pretty sure this is going to be the watershed moment where everybody gets a harsh reality check that maybe the roster of the U.S. men's national team ain't quite as good as everybody thinks it is.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that last little bit. I would have been okay with Cherundolo or Wilfred Nancy or Jim Curtin. I would have been fine with all those guys. Pochettino is okay for me, about on the same par. I do like the freshness of it in the sense that he won't really have much of an opinion about a lot of the players coming in. So it'll be a clean slate for the most part, I think. I mean, there's a couple of guys obviously that were in the Premier League, but for the most part, he'll have a clean slate. And so the thing I am adamant about in terms of my one cycle only fanaticism, which had nothing to do with Greg, it's about complacency and not carrying over, because people that carry over almost always become sort of stagnant with who is their guys. And so I'm ready for a fresh guy. And so this certainly checks all those boxes.
Yeah, I think we've learned in the last couple of weeks that if people will bitch about Emma Hayes, they'll bitch about anybody.
Yeah.
Well,
she looks real good after 10 games, doesn't she? Or whatever it is, 12 games.
I think there's an interesting idea to be thrown out there that after the World Cup, maybe they should consider hiring her for the next men's national team gig.
I would not hate that idea. And if she does the Olympics double, by all means. Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. What's up with you, Dan? What do you think of Pochettino as for the Yank gig?
Satisfy some of the Euro snobs. Does he know the player pool? Does he know his way around international management? Because it's a different skill set. Who knows? I mean, Alex Ferguson couldn't succeed as an international coach, or a national team coach, rather.
It is quite different.
But it will be fun to watch and have popcorn for.
Yeah, I've been a big advocate for them hiring somebody with international experience, but you know who doesn't or didn't have any international experience? Emma Hayes.
Yeah, lots of people actually.
But she immediately turned around. But the problem is in making that point is that the women's roster situation and the men's roster situation could not be further and more different from each other. So she's walking into the best pool of players available on the planet. He's walking into a pretty mid-tier pool of players.
She has Man City. He has FC Dallas.
Yeah, I give her a lot of credit for, finally moving on to
Ouch.
the new guard. That women's national team went way too long with a lot of the old pieces, which is what, again, complacency, right? It's the same thing. And she came in and just totally started over. And that's what you have to do every cycle, in my opinion. So,
Well, Buzz, I think Dan has given us a good opportunity to segue into the hot topic of tonight, which is as you mentioned, the closing transfer window. And it appears that Dallas is pretty much maybe only vaguely slightly better in a position than it was before the window opened.
yeah, they maybe have added a little depth, at the holding mid spot. And they have maybe brought in a right back and both of these are short term, that will make them a little bit better in the short term. So,
Okay.
I think we should talk about each one of those in general, but you're right that like the big issue was what they didn't do, which I think also we should talk about, is the big need that didn't get filled. They didn't really make themselves markedly better. Maybe that's actually okay, given the fact that they have an interim coach. Remember, that was the first thing I asked at the press conference when they changed coaches was, you really going to go through this window with an interim coach, given his 100% input? They were like, yes, absolutely. So those are all talking points.
So if they're going to take off the rest of the season, can we take off the rest of the season?
I suppose you can if you want.
Because what's the point? I've just, the idea that they are going to go through this transfer window and not not do the things that everybody on God's green earth knows they need to get done is inexcusable and unacceptable in my book.
Well, all I can think of in that regard is that they have an interim coach who's trying to win a job. And he probably went in there and said, you're telling me to win this job, and yet you're not giving me pieces to win this job. So you have to give me this and this for the rest of this season so I can show you that I can get this team in the playoffs and win this job. And then we'll worry about the big pieces. I think Dan has some stuff for us that shows that they did attempt some other things as well. But the moves they got done, to me, scream Peter Lucene knocking on the door down to Zanata's office and going, you're giving me this and you're giving me that, or else this is ridiculous.
But the two moves in Show and Ruan are simply Band-Aids for flat tires that appeared out of nowhere that they weren't prepared for.
Exactly. I mean, that's why they call them. That's why we call them rental players, and why I think Lucene's hands are all over them, in the sense that like one of them is a body to replace Paxton in some capacity and Frazier in some capacity, and the other one's a band, and Delgado in some capacity. Well, remember the end we decided he was a 10 anyway. Yeah. But in the central of midfield, free up Leggett to play a little higher. Mendy's 34 and can only play like every other game apparently. So a lot of stuff going on there. And then since Giovanni is not back and insanely seems to be behind Velasco in his return, even though his injury came 2 or 3 months earlier, which just again shows you how hard it is to judge these ACL things, which is a whole other topic about that and who you should have IR'd for the year, et cetera, and trying to shore up a position where all the options are either unproven projects who haven't come through, or they're veteran guys that just are constantly banged up or out or playing out of position.
Yeah. So. I'm not a baseball fan, but I always am marveled at that point of the season where the trade deadline happens and a team just realizes they're going to be total crap. So they just start selling all the players just to make up, draft picks or get in prospects or whatever that is in a baseball. Yeah. And I always think, I watch that as a non-baseball fan and I go, that must be the most depressing moment as a fan, for when their team just goes, yeah, we're done for the season, and there's still like 100 games left or something. That's what this feels like to me. It feels like Dan Hunt and Andre Zanata just said, call it. We just need to wait till the next time and figure out who we're going to hire.
Maybe it will.
And I think that's a real crime. And I hope people voice their displeasure.
Well, for one thing, baseball people are a lot better at math, and a lot less teams make the playoffs. So they are able to figure that out really quickly, that they're out of it. That's one thing we've talked about from the get-go when they made this change, when they said there's still enough time to do this. And we're like, but is there though? Because the math on the points you were going to need was so bad. But they did a bit on it. They tried to rally. And then obviously they just got in this window, and like these moves feel like Band-Aids. And again, there's kind of a dichotomy here, because I'm actually okay with that, because I would have hated to see them invest like 3 or 4 year contracts in dudes when you didn't have a locked in coach. I mean, what if Lucine's putting in half the input on, should I get these guys? And then in a month and a half, he's going to be gone, hypothetically.
Yeah. And I guess, again, it just proves out that they had no backup plan when they decided they needed to get rid of Estevez. They're doing this on the fly, and it just is more proof of what we've known forever, which is this is just a horribly, horribly, horribly run organization.
That's maybe a little harsh, but it's definitely not a first-class organization.
How is this not a horrible ×3 organization, Buzz? Look where they are. This is the third coach in a row that they've hired, and they've had to fire before their first contract was up, and they've gotten nothing out of it. Look at where this team was in 2016, and look where it is 8 years later.
Well, I think I don't want to necessarily be all defending them and stuff, but I think that your and my idea about a well-run organization and what's important are different than theirs. You know, you and I, and probably Dan, I'm sure too, look at results and trophies and things like that, and quality of players, quality of roster, manipulation of the cap. Are you doing a good job? I think they consider more, how close are we to selling out every game? How much money are the sales from, making us? Are you buying and selling as the academy, making us money? Are we losing money hand over fist? For the Hunts for a long time, we believe, and based on people we know, didn't make a lot of money with FC Dallas. They pretty much broke even or lost a little pretty much every year until they figured out you could sell Pepe for $20 million. So in my mind, that's what matters to them, is the business model and making the thing survive and make money is all they care about, or not all, is the main thing they care about, in my opinion, based on their behavior. And so like their judgment that they're doing pretty good is based on the fact that they've sold out every home game this year.
But you and I both know that is a business trick.
Yeah.
In terms of how they define ticket sales. It's not that they're selling them themselves. I mean, that's way too much granular discussion.
It was way better at the beginning of the season.
It is. But they're also running a tremendous risk of putting a pretty crappy product on the field. And those stands, as the season has gone on, the butts in seat metric that we all really know is the atmosphere and everything has changed for the worse dramatically since it was really good at the beginning of the Estevez run.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to go to, I think there are worse run franchises in this league. And so I think there are also way better run franchises in this league. So while I think that I think they're not doing a particularly good job with the roster and the player personnel and in the academy these days, I do think that it could be a lot worse. We see some teams that are way worse off. So I mostly agree with you. I just don't want to quite go that it's the most horrific run franchise.
Well, I didn't say it was the worst. I'm just saying it's horrific ×3. It is. Yeah. It's bad. It's frustrating. And if I'm a fan of if for anybody out there listening that's frustrated by the lack of anything going on here, you have every right to be upset about this. I mean, we've been fans of this club since day one, going almost 30 years now. And, at some point, it's okay to be frustrated with the lack of positive movement in this thing.
Well, Dan and I were talking before we started recording, and I remarked that it was a second-class franchise, and he said, Dan, not to out you, but I think you would agree that you said it wasn't. You might not even be second class. So are you with Peter more than I am?
Yeah, I think there are some really wonderfully talented and pushing in the right direction. I think there are some people who are not pushing in the right direction for what I perceive to be a good functioning organization. The same names have been bandied around for many years and are still knocking about. The people who seem to come and go seem to be, talented, find something better. Talented, find something better. It is what it is. I don't want to overreact or anything, but do you think the blog should be more burgundy or gold next week?
More burgundy, of course. Maroon.
Or that whatever the green is that the Dallas Trinity are planning to use as well.
Oh, they got a green in the mix. I missed that.
There is a green.
Yep.
We've never seen it, but it exists.
I think I missed the joke.
He's suggesting that we might be changing the colors of the website, Third Degree, to burgundy and gold of the Dallas Trinity.
Because now we're just going to become a podcast about our professional women's team.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Hey, look, here's the thing. We're at a point where I do believe, and I've tried hard to push this along, and nobody seems to pick up on it. But I'm hoping that after this window goes by and nothing of consequence takes place, that the rank and file fan of this club or media member who spends any time paying attention to this club begins to loudly start asking questions what in the world Andre Zanata does and his role as a roster builder, because it is very clear to me at this point. Now, let me also say this. Let me have the caveat, because we're recording this at like 9 p.m. on Wednesday and the window doesn't close for another 4 hours. He may pull some magic rabbit out of his ass, and I'll feel silly for saying this. But if the window goes by and they haven't hired a center back for this team after all this time, I'm going to wonder how long it's going to take Dan Hunt to fire him, because he needs to hire somebody that knows what they're doing, because this is unacceptable.
Well, it'll be a while because they just gave him a promotion and a raise. But you're right, because Nico Staf started telling me back in February, or maybe a couple weeks into the season, that they were going to get a center back next window, which is probably a good time. Dan, do you want to give your center back news bit here?
Wait, there's center back news?
Well, it's news. Bad news. You know about it, I think.
I don't know if I do. Go ahead. What's the story?
So, I'd heard a few weeks ago. I randomly had a second person independently tell me today. And that was that FC Dallas was very close to a signing, agreed a transfer in principle, agreed a contract with the player. Player was here. The player was ready to sign, and the player failed a medical. Now, if you are aware of my love of my hometown team, Luton Town, and our wonderful injury crises, missing 9 players for Saturday's absolute bumming by Burnley. Monday's.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. Me too. I haven't watched a soccer game in a few weeks, and then I get that shit. But a certain Mr. Gabriel Osho missed half the season, came back, I think, against Man United, maybe. Put in some great performances, and then at the end of his contract, kind of wanted to chase the money a little bit. I've heard from a couple of people now that money was coming from FC Dallas, but his lingering knee issues prevented that, so he scampered off to France instead. Okay.
And if that story is true, and they attempted to, get Gabriel Osho on a free and pay him some money, that's, I suppose, a good thing. I think it's probably also a better thing that the doctor said, you know what, your knee isn't good enough for us to pay you that level of money. And whatever that story turns out to be, one way or the other, is fine. But here's the next question I have for you.
Where's the backup?
Is he the only center back on the planet Earth? How do you not have like a line of like 5 people to choose from for this role? You've had a year plus to find a center back for this team.
That's the hard part, right? On the one hand, you're like, oh yeah, went for a Premier League centre back. Good move. A guy on the cusp of the Nigerian national team. Awesome. A lot of other teams are signing centre backs, and we're kind of sitting with our thumbs up our ass here.
So whose fault is this? Is this Zanata's fault? Is this Dan Hunt's fault? Is it both their faults?
It's got to be, right? I mean, remember when that those transfer target board was leaked a few years ago, and they were all kind of crappy options, but there were many options. Teams are, I've never known a team kind of put all their eggs in one basket. I assume they haven't here, but to kind of, they're batting at 0 right now.
Yeah, to be fair, Zanata does have a technical director under him. He does have a head of scouting. They do have that European scout that allegedly is responsible for Busa, but also in Asali. They have a group. So like, it's actually the funny part is that like, it seems to be getting worse, even though they now have a group. Like they did better when it was just Clavijo and Poppy, it seems like, than they have lately, or even the guy that went off to Orlando with Poppy, whose name is leaking out. Remember? Yeah, thank you. Between him and Zanata. So, it's certainly, in the end of the day, like what matters is what you deliver. And right now they're not delivering players to make this team any better. And it's one thing that the problem here, I think, for all of us is that it's one thing to say, look, we brought in some guys, but like the guys you're bringing in are guys that are going to make your team, as you put it, Peter, just like, maybe markedly better. And that's about it. These are not guys that are going to help you compete at the top of this league. So what is the goal here? Are you trying to win championships? Or are you trying to just get into the playoffs? Because these moves are just get into the playoffs.
Well, moves. Buzz, I'm not even sure the two people they bought and are literally rented for the rest of the season, because both of those contracts are lined up for them to cut them at the end of the season. One guy's out of contract and the other guy's literally here on a loan isn't he on here on a loan?
It's a year loan, so it could carry to the middle of next season, but you could also just void it and he could be gone. So.
Right. And so that to me screams, hey, we're just filling a couple of holes until the end of the season.
No, that's right. But I actually think Ruan makes them better. But whether you can keep him or not, it's a totally different question. So, I totally agree with you that, like, at best, you've kind of slapped a Band-Aid on some things and made this team a tiny bit better. You've done nothing to, like, actually try and compete and, like, turn this team into a team that can not even forget about even winning something, just get into the top half of the West again, right? You're just holding at, remember, how many years now have we said this in a row? If you stand pat, you get past. And we've said that for like 5 or 6 years. And look where this team has gone from, when Oscar was here, they were winning supporter shields and tying for supporter shields. And now 6 or 7 years later, they've been doing a whole lot of standing pat or going backwards, and look where they are. It's like, we're right about that. It's easy for us on the outside to say that and have it be true, because it is, but it's where we are.
Well, I hope that if in fact this window goes by and they don't make any other moves, I would like to think that Dan Hunt has the courage to publicly come out and explain why this has played out the way it's played out. And if they've just decided, look, the cards have fallen with all the injuries and our choice to change managers and find a new manager, here's how the season's going to play out. It is what it is, guys. Just stick with us. It's going to get better next season. We've got big plans and dreams and hopes, but the best path for us to do that was to manage the rest of the season this way. And if he does that, then I think a lot of grace will be given in it. But I guess time will tell how they decide to communicate.
I hope that's true, because it is true that neither one of these moves that they have done have handcuffed them past the end of the season, and so there is credit to that. It's funny to me that they sat in that press conference and how they talked about the next window that Luke saying was 100% going to be involved and they were going to be doing this, that, or whatever. Maybe in hindsight, they did not promise that they were going to be making big time moves in this next window, but they obviously have just made short-term moves, and thank goodness they haven't handcuffed the team and made it any worse. Because it'd be worse if you went out and signed a guy for 6 years that stunk.
All right, but didn't that also make the Gabriel Osho rumor really confusing? Like, if in fact the point to all of this is just to get to the end of the season, then why did they even try to get Gabriel Osho in the first place?
Well,
because that's not a guy you signed for 6 months.
Well, that's true.
Well,
I mean,
that would be at that point fixing a structural issue that goes beyond which coach you have.
Oh no, I agree, but you see my point, Dan, which is if the lack of other moves is just them deciding to close up shop for the rest of the season and just patch the tire with two people, why would you go through the hassle of trying to hire like a legitimate center back? Just because you think he's so good that no matter who you hire, they'll be happy to have him? Is that the answer to that? Like, you have an opportunity to hire like a legitimately good top tier MLS center back? Is that what that is?
I'd hope so, because ultimately, Luxan or not, we've still been talking about the need for a starting centre back for 2 years.
I agree. I'm just trying to. I'm trying to piece all this together. What I'm trying to do, and I think all three of us are trying to do, is I'm trying to get a semblance of what the effing plan is here.
Well, I think it's okay to have a two-frontal approach. You can have a BandAid approach for a couple of emergencies that you need to solve for the rest of this season. And you can also be thinking long-term, like a problem we've had for a long time, we need to fix for the long term. Those can be two different things, and you can do them both at the same time. I'm glad that the Band-Aids aren't going to cost them past the end of the season. I would have also been glad if they could have finally realized a problem they've had since Reto Ziegler left, which is they needed a center back. So, it's okay if they would have done both of those things. And I'm glad that the short-term one is not going to handcuff them. And I would have been, if that guy would have cleared his physical, I would have been very happy with that level of signing. The guy's not 34, that's he's only 26. And so you would have theoretically, had a guy with a pedigree from a club that, was from the championship getting into the Premier League, and a guy that would have been 26 through 30. So 4 or 5 years of prime of his career. I would have been okay with all that. They would have not been upsetting.
It is also curious to wonder why one medical team says, yeah, your knee's not good enough for us to sign you. But then a French club goes, oh yeah, no, it's good enough.
Well, the salary cap changes a lot of things. If you're in a club in a league that doesn't have salary caps, you can afford to pay guys to sit around and rehab. You can afford to miss. You can afford to have backups that make $5 million.
Yeah.
If you're in a league with a cap, you can't afford any of those things. You can't miss on a DP period. You can't miss on a guy making $1 million, which this kind of center back almost certainly would have been. You can't. It's completely different when you're in a salary cap league.
Well, the good news is we can all just kind of keep a weekly check-in on how Gabriel Osho's season is going in Ligue 1.
Starting this week.
Yep. Wow. Well, and there's also this weird world, if you think about it, that if Giovanni Jesus was coming back from his knee injury and Frazier, for example, hadn't gotten injured, maybe they don't make any moves this window because they try to get Osho and don't sign him, and we don't have nothing.
I think that's true. I think if Frazier hadn't gotten hurt and you can say this about anybody, with the overload in midfield injuries, whether you want to include Delgado, Paxton, Leggett was out a little bit, but now he's back. Iermoney's out for a couple of games. All those things piled up and kept him, made them have a need. If those guys would have been all been healthy, A, you wouldn't have needed this guy, but B, you probably would be in the playoff picture. And the same thing with Giovanni, if he'd have been healthy all year, also same sort of thing. Or if he'd come back middle of the season, same thing. So it's, those are impossible to,
I've got a question, and I'm sure this is going to also extend to Discord when people listen. Taking into account the last two windows before this, the last two mid-season windows, I should say, we got Iermoney and Frazier, who contributed way more than he should have. Season before that, Martin Paz and Sebastian Leggett. The last time there was a coaching change, the summer window consisted of Facundo Quignon and the promise of significant reinforcements. No, wait, sorry, let me rephrase that. Reinforcements, and I mean significant reinforcements, as Dan Hunt said to the television before that inevitably didn't happen. Is this better or worse than then? Strictly the window and the activity within it.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Was this a more or less successful summer window than 2021 when Lucci got fired and all they managed to do was bring in Facundo Quignon?
I don't know yet because I have no idea what qualities this guy's show has. I'm interested in hearing more from Buzz about Ruan because my impression is his forte as a player is a position that they don't use a lot. I think but we'll get into that in a second.
I was really hoping for a knee-jerk reaction then. Oh, man.
Sorry.
Well, I think Facundo was always terrible, so I think it's already better.
I think you just had it out from him from day one.
Yeah, because
he scored against Houston, and you're there like, boo, that guy sucks.
Yeah, he's slow.
Man, I barely remember him.
Facundo? I mean, at some point he was being outplayed by him.
Oh, yeah, no, that's right. Facundo, the holding mid. That's right. Now I remember who you're talking about. Yeah, Facu. Yeah. Now I remember who you're talking about.
The Thiago Santos late replacement.
Wow, way late replacement. Holy
Yeah.
cow! Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Facundo put a lot of miles in on this for this club, not necessarily high quality ones. I guess it's to be determined if these two guys. I mean, I don't even know if either one of them are going to be with this club next season.
Yeah, that's a fair question. Let's talk about the player we know something about, which is Ruan. This guy's show, I couldn't tell you anything. I mean, I know he's played in the Israeli league, but that means nothing to me. You know, I don't think that league's as good as MLS. So maybe at the top end it might be.
It
But
might
Ruan,
be as
we
good
know.
as USL Championship.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, then what? Let me ask a question. Is he leaving that team on his own accord, or did he ask to? Do we know what his backstory is and why he's being sold? Did he want to leave?
I think he wanted to leave once he had this opportunity.
Okay. Meaning, like,
And I
is the
think
team trying to unload him? I guess is the question I'm trying to ask.
I don't think so. I think they agreed to let him out of his deal once he sort of had this, if I remember correctly, opportunity. I didn't dig deep into like what his contract situation was, to be honest.
Look, anybody looking to get out of having to apply their trade in Israel right now, I totally understand. Maybe wanting to relocate your life situation. So
it is a loan, so I'm sure that like Dallas is paying them a certain amount of money, to get him. His market value is less than $1 million. So, it's like what they're paying for the loan.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Let me ask the question a little bit more simply. Are we getting a guy that their club doesn't want anymore because he sucks, or are we getting a guy that's trying to get out of a bad situation and we really don't know what we're getting in terms of quality player?
I mean, we don't have any clue what kind of player we're getting. I think we're getting a player, though, that when Dallas called, he said, "Oh, I would love to do that," and then the club's like, "Okay, go ahead." It's like when I would equate it to when Mauro Diaz got the $3 million contract when he was on $1 million contract, and Dallas is like, "Well, good luck, have fun." I kind of feel with that. This is like that. They're like, "Oh, well, shit, go." This is what it feels like to me, but I don't know anywhere near enough about the Israeli league to say. So
okay,
that's all just vibe. So Ruan, on the other hand, is actually pretty good. I think he's better as a wing back than an outside back. But if you remember when Montreal played Dallas earlier in the year, he absolutely destroyed Dallas on the outside. And that was the game. In fact, we were very clear on this podcast. Remember, like that was a game where they showed you what a wing back should play like. And Dallas's guys weren't playing like that. And he annihilated Dallas on his side the whole game. He is a, relatively good player getting forward. I believe they said he's got more assists this season than anyone else on Dallas does, for example. So he gets forward and he can get crosses in. And saying, and if you watch the post-game press conference from the Juarez game, he talked about the failure to get crosses into the box a bunch. So to me, this screams like a guy a player that would fit exactly what Luxane wants to do. Now, remember, Luxane runs this flexible tactic where it shifts in and out of a back three to a back four. And if this guy on the right back spot is a perfect player to be able to flex in and out of from a wing back or wide midfielder to back to a fullback. So he definitely fits exactly what Luxane is trying to do. Now, again, we talked about how his contract's up. They only paid $50,000 for him in GAM. Now, just to put that in perspective, $50,000 in GAM is what you pay, for example, to get someone's homegrown rights or to get like a mid to late, like a late first round, second or third round draft pick. These are not what you pay. Like an international slot goes for $250. So even if he hits the metrics, which is probably him re-signing with Dallas, and it goes to $150, that's still jack squat in GAM. This is basically a free player. So why Montreal wanted to dump a player? Consider that when Edwin Cerrillo got refused to sign a contract, Dallas traded him to the LA Galaxy for like what ended up being with all the metrics hit like $600K in GAM. So this is way, way off what somebody even valued Edwin Cerrillo. So why in the world is Montreal dropping this guy for free? Well, either he's impossible in the locker room. I have no idea. He's been in MLS for a fair time though, so that probably isn't true. Or he just told them flat out, I refuse to re-sign here. You might as well get what you can for me because I'm not staying here. And that's probably more than likely what the case is. And then Dallas was the only one that was willing to give anything for them, for a guy, because this is not a guy that's going to make you into a superstar team. This is just a guy, is a dude plus, he's not a straight dude. He's got a little bit more than that, but he's also 29 going on 30 next year. So I think this is a player that right this minute really fits what the coach wants to do. He seems to be pretty damn healthy. He's very physical, very fast from watching him play, just tear it up and down, can run the full field, can play the real wing back if that's what you want. And we've seen Lexane do that quite a bit. So I think that's a piece that actually works in all the ways that matter. Now, for the price you paid, you're great value. Is it going to make the team long-term better? Man, they now have 5 or maybe even 6 right backs if you count Paul Arriola. So there is an added bonus, but because your front line has also got some injuries in it, this now lets you move Arriola back to the front line full time if that's something that interests you. So, there's a lot of BandAid at that right back spot right now, and this is going to get them through the season, and it'll give us as reviewers and them plenty of time to decide if this is a guy they want to keep and what it'll cost. Right now, he's on 440 as a base. Ema's like on 370. Farfan's like on 500. So his money is right in line with what should be a starting.
What's Giovanni Jesus getting?
Well, his is lower. Remember, he's a U22 initiative guy, so he would have had a high buy price, but then a lower contract and a lower cap hit. So he's an unusual situation with different kind of metrics. But his salary is not equivalent to what a starting outside back would get in this league. Whereas like Junka, for example, is on 250. Okay, that's more of a reserve number. That's closer to what Giovanni has because he's on the U22 initiative versus Farfan's 5, whatever it is. Ema's kind of in the middle. Like Ema's contract happened when he came off of like a 20 game start season and was becoming the full-time guy. And so his contract started at 200 something. I can't remember exactly what it was. And it's gone up every year since for like 3 years since then. So he's now on like 380 or I don't have it in front of me, something like that, under 400. And then his contract is going into, this is the end of his last contract year. So Ema's an option next season. So, and then they also have Endele, of course, who's on like 70 because he's on like that rookie, or first or second year draft pick, kind of really low number. Lots of pieces, so they got some choices this winter, which is a topic for a different day. They're going to have to make some choices about and if you count the guy they've got on what we think is a hybrid contract at North Texas, they've got 6 right backs, if you're including Arriola. So they got some decisions to make in this position. And
don't forget Jesus Ferreira. He's a right back.
Yeah, right. Jesus right back. Fair. Sam Junka switchfoot outside back. He loves that. They got Ibiaga's a right back now apparently.
Holy Christ, that's a lot, Buzz.
Well, Ibiaga's the joke about the Juarez game. I'm just saying that
they're hiring Jurgen Klinsmann.
I'm just saying that this is obviously a position that has a great deal of flux in it over the next, the back end of this season and going into next season.
Well,
it could be, so the money is about appropriate. It didn't cost them nothing to get him, relatively speaking, so I actually think this is a really good value move for a guy who, if he does do well here, could really be a good piece for you.
What is Emma Tuamasi's injury, by the way?
It's been a couple of different things. Like he, I think the first one was something like a quad, and then he came back
at one point,
and there was an ankle. He's just having trouble getting 100%. And then for when he first came back, he wasn't fit because he'd been out for 2 months or whatever it was. So he's having trouble getting back to 100% fit and 100% comfortable. In some games you can see it, in some games you can't. Like he's Dallas's best one-on-one outside defender. He's the fastest player on the team in terms of in-game running. I have no idea if you put him on a track what it looked like, but in-game he has the fastest sprint time. So like if you have a guy on the outside who's trying to take you to the inline, he's the best guy to stop that. Now his team conceptual defense can sometimes be a little bit weak, and he used to be a really good offensive player, but Nico Staf has coached that out of him. So he's like 20,
keeps on giving.
Yeah, he's like, I don't remember what he's now, 27, 28. I mean, he's a 6 or 7 year MLS veteran with 100 games under his belt. So like if Dallas decides they don't want to pick up his option, which will probably be like 400 something at this point, which again, that's a normal outside back starting number. Someone else will pick him up. He'll have some options, but he needs to get healthy and stay healthy. And Ruan seems to be really good at that. As much as we complain about having people hurt all the time, Ruan, when I looked at his numbers, looked pretty consistently like he's pretty healthy most of the time. Knock on wood, and we don't reckon now. So, you can buy into that.
I want to ask actually the most important question, which is, with this other guy's show, do we potentially have a candidate for the infamous list? Because he is the same player who, on his Instagram page, posted a photo of himself in an FC Dallas trading shirt with not one, not two, but three emojis of batteries out of charge. Meaning, I have 3 batteries that need recharging. Hello, Dallas fans. I'm out of battery.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Wow. And some of the pictures are hysterical. Like, he looks like his face is like, oh my Lord, what have I done? You know
what? I really appreciate a player that proactively sets fan expectations.
Yeah. Well, I think actually the in the middle of an injury crisis that the center back target failed a medical was more list appropriate than.
Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah. Show, because I have no clue what we're getting. I'm willing to reserve judgment. If he can outplay Carl Sante, who I don't think should have been on an MLS roster as a 6. I think he should have been signed as a center back project. And yet he's been forced to play 6 or 7 games now, including like 3 straight starts as a 6. Well, if he can outplay that guy, or if he can outplay Frazier, that's a win. I have no idea what his salary is, but if you can get that out of him, and not just for the rest of this season, like if that's a level he has and you can keep him as a backup or like a sometimes like 10, 12 game starter next year, that's an okay piece. If he's a good sitting in that spot, playing in a double or playing in a single and letting double eight in front of him, or doubling up with Mendy and letting Mendy not have to, work so hard. Mendy consistently runs more than anybody else. If you could have that not happen, that'd be great for a 34, 35-year-old,
Sure. Look, I don't want anybody to think I'm not going to give him a chance to prove himself. History tells me I think I know what to expect based on the level and where he's coming from and the pedigree and all of that. But he may end up being a completely solid MLS dude type, which this team may need next season. I don't know.
Yeah, you need it. Sorry, Peter, go ahead.
I was just saying it's just not a signing that's going to excite anybody. And history tells us he's not going to come in here and burn up the world and make this suddenly a playoff contender. He's just here to patch a hole.
Yeah, you need a certain amount of dudes. And unfortunately, Eugene Ansah has not set the high bar for players from the Israeli league to make us feel really good about
oh my God,
moves.
That guy's terrible.
He's just a dude also, but not,
I don't even think Ansah has qualified as dude status.
I mean, he's losing out to Farrington and to Kamungo, who's having just an absolutely horrific second season. The signs are not good there. That again, that's another guy that is going to be out of contract. In a way, one of the positives of the situation right now, as much as we don't like what's happening, there are a good chunk of contracts that are coming off the books at the end of the season, and as much as like Nico Staf has wanted to add those pieces at the bottom of the roster, those veteran pieces, like none of those pieces I think are really handcuffing them other than bizarrely Paul Ariel's contract, so it's like they're relatively unencumbered in that sense. The worries are the Areolas, the Pax and Pomacol contract, how long does Leggett have at that contract? Those are the things that you have to really worry about, which we'll all get to later in the year.
Yeah. At some point, I think we need to just spend more time taking an accounting of Zanata's performance in this role and the time he's been here.
I think that's fair. I did a thing, I think it was last year, where I tried to look at each move he made, like in the moment, like the context of the moment. And some of them I thought were terrible and some of them I thought were pretty good. To me, like a lot of people hated the Edwin trade, but in the moment, like to get $600K for a guy that basically turned down any contract offer, that's actually a pretty good move.
Oh, the Cerrillo, Edwin Cerrillo.
Yeah. Sorry, not Edwin Giassi move. That's an F move. I'll try and maybe I can try and dig that out and update it. But it certainly isn't. When we look at the overall state of the roster, certainly we can't be pleased with what that is, and it'll be interesting to see how much of that was Nico Staf's influence and how much of it was not his influence. Since they're going to be able to clear a fair bit of it this winter, I think I'll also look into that too as we go forward.
Well, I mean, look, he's in the role, and people who think he might have been doing a good job are going to throw Peter Musa out there and Alara Mendy out there, and maybe Velasco out there. In terms of and hey, he was the one that went out and got Leggett and Areola to show up and play well for one season. Maybe if you really sit and think about it, Zanata is on the plus side. In terms of overall additions to this team. I don't know, but at this particular moment, considering that we're all the way down the road at this point, and this is where we're at, it just feels like it really has trended downward for a while now.
Well, that first year, and Dan, I want to hear what you think about this too, this trend on Zanata, because that first season under Nico, they went hard and got Paul, spent a lot of money to get Paul, and they went hard to get Leggett. And a lot of those things that first year worked really well. Jesus was on fire. And of course, they stayed really, really healthy, relatively speaking. And then the last 2 years, they've been absolutely devastated by injuries. And it's almost impossible to really grade. You like Alan Velasco. You like Peter Musa. You like, I say you, maybe you mean me, Yara Mendy. There's like a lot of pieces I like. But then there's a lot of things I don't understand. I don't understand how you didn't recognize you needed a center back for a long, long time. I don't understand a lot of these signings that are happening in the academy are confusing the crap out of me. I like that they're now overloading North Texas with homegrowns because you can use that rule. I like the way they've manipulated the senior roster with this extra player. The recognition that like you needed to put Paxton on the IR once that happened. But then I don't like the failure to recognize coming into the season that you were absolutely screwed because you had Velasco and Giovanni on about for basically the bulk of the year. So like sometimes they do moves that I'm like, oh, great move. I like that. And other times I'm like, what are you doing? So I'm really hit or miss on the whole thing. Dan, how do you feel about it?
Hit and miss is completely appropriate. I just still remember that preseason press conference when you asked Zanata about putting Velasco on IR, and he looked at you like you just farted.
Yeah, he could not believe that I thought that was like what? Why would anyone do that? I was like, oh my God, here we are with 9 games left. And he's not.
Yeah, you could see it a mile off. Yeah, I mean, we thought that maybe Giovanni Jesus would be kind of back on the field at this point, but we also know just from life that unless you're Tyreek Scott, you've basically crap for the first year back from an ACL anyway. So to have 2 players that you're like, yes, these are key players that the season is going to depend on. One who wasn't necessarily very good to begin with. I just don't know what they're thinking there. And to kind of fill roster spots with players who maybe don't need to be on an MLS roster right now, to waste international spots on NSali and a significant amount of money, even if it's off budget. There's just some baffling decisions there. Some decisions that don't seem like they have a lot of method behind them.
Putting Ansa on a TAM deal. I mean, that's like one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, I think there's sometimes there's a lack of recognition, I think. And I don't know whose quote unquote fault this is per se, but like the idea that you can compete in this league without 3 DPs and without 3 good DPs and without those DPs hitting. If you're not LAFC or Miami, where guys are taking less money to come play for you, then you have to have these big money players hit. And to go into a season with one of your best players, your big money players, one of your DPs, your talisman, your guy who's going to create and cause as much chaos as possible, that guy's out for the bulk of the year. And by the time he comes back, Jesus Ferreira has been in and out of the lineup and injured and he's getting paid $2.5 million, and he's haven't been able to string together 10 games in 2.5 years now. And Paxton being injured, that's the failure recognition that like you can, this roster's good enough. Maybe this roster barely can get on the field. It's like, how do you expect that to compete? I just don't understand that part, more than anything.
Well, because I think at the beginning of the season, they all looked at each other and said, if all of these things go the way we want them to go, this could be a pretty good roster. But we've been talking about this since before the season started. This was all highly predictable in outcomes.
It was.
Almost to a man. I mean, the only one that I think catches any of us off guard is Frazier getting hurt, but I don't think any of us really were hoping that Frazier was going to have to be like a critical component to this thing working in the first place.
No, he's a dude. He's a filler.
Right.
He's a backup, like 6. You don't want him starting more than 10 games.
So everybody else that is hurt or has been hurt off and on over the course of the season is, for the most part, was a high risk, highly predictable outcome.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Maybe not Delgado, but other than that, I would agree with that.
Or maybe and just giving him benefit of the doubt, Emma Tuamasi.
Yeah, he's been pretty consistent the last few years.
But you can pretty much go down the rest of the list and go, yeah, check. Yeah, we kind of assume that to be the case. And here's the other thing is that, the fact that to your point, they didn't buy somebody else out of their contract, whether it be Giovanni Jesus or Velasco, and essentially wasted that opportunity to bring in somebody better. That
was my overall point, was that, at the time there was discussion that there was going to be possibly a 4th DP, and how important DPs are and how vastly you need to how important you need them to hit is, okay, then put Allen on the IR and go get another DP to replace him, and then worry about how you solve that problem a year later when maybe you'll have a 4th DP, or maybe you have to use your one buyout. But it's such an important piece. Such a massive piece. If you miss on a DP, unless the rest of your roster is just really, really well built and really healthy and they can carry you to the playoffs. But if you don't have that, if everything else doesn't hit, then one bad DP, one out for the year DP will just crush you. Because then again, cap league, you can't have, those 3 guys get paid more than the rest of the roster combined, basically, without doing the math. I'm just saying that, generally speaking. So it's like you just cannot have that much value. Remember when they were talking, when they fired Nico Staf, what was the line they dropped about how they had like and I even added it up one time. It was like $2.5 million in players that wasn't on the field or something like that. That's like your whole cap basically was not on the, equivalently was not on the field.
Right.
Because at one point, Paul was out, Leggett was out, Ariel was out, Giovanni was out, Jesus was out. It's like Paxton was out. It's like, come on. It's like, forget even 1 or 2 of those guys being out crushes you, especially your DP.
Yeah, but again, of all those players, almost all of them were high risk injury likelihoods.
Foreseeable.
Like you could predict that I'm beating a dead horse. Sorry.
Yeah, well, part of that too is like too many old guys in key positions. You can have old players that are good, but old players tend to get hurt more and they take longer to return. It's like if you have a bunch of them, you're in trouble. 1 or 2 is okay.
Well, it's interesting to me that Alara Mendy was not available for Leagues Cup. I mean, not having him available for Leagues Cup pretty much was the nail in the coffin for that tournament for this team.
Yeah, 100%.
And so the decision not to play him, whether he was borderline healthy or not, is a decision to save for whatever reason.
I think that's probably a calculation of I'd rather have him for the rest of the remainder of the regular season than I would for Leagues Cup. Probably.
Yeah.
Would be my guess.
All right. Well, again, all of this is caveated by the fact that by the time we're done recording this, there'll be a couple of hours left before the window closes. But I think we all agree, based on what we've been told and sources and so forth, everybody left the FC Dallas offices a few hours ago.
Yeah.
Okay. So now they've got time off leading up to their next game, which is the game in DC on the 24th. So they've got 10 days. Buzz, anything else about this that you want to get into?
Well, the last press conference was that I can find is the one that Luke Luxane did at the end of the Juarez game. So we don't really have any information about returning players or health of players, unless Dan, unless you have anything. But I think it's reasonable to expect that coming out of this time off, that we might see Jesus Ferreira, we might see Liam Frazier, perhaps possibly we might see Alan Velasco soon. It feels like Delgado's the one that's going to be the furthest one out. And for bizarrely, how Giovanni Jesus again is behind Alan Velasco in progression is just mind-boggling to me. It says something either really bad about Giovanni's rehab habits or the people that did his work on his knee versus what Alan has done, and maybe what Alan's rehab habits are like, perhaps, or just the general way those two players heal. It's inconceivable that Alan could possibly be back earlier, which is, and that's the one side of the Ruan thing we didn't mention, was that, does it say anything about perhaps Giovanni not being back this year at all? I think that's a legitimate question to wonder about. So
I would assume that means he's not coming back at all.
Yeah, that's kind of a guess. I don't want to.
There's only 9 games left.
I know.
Which leads me to another question, which is, there are only 9 games left. The odds of them making the playoffs or even making the play-in game are really, really small. And therefore, should you be rushing Alan Velasco back? Should you not make sure that whatever's going on with Jesus Ferreira's bottom half is, fixed and correct, whether that requires surgery or not?
Well, I would say to be patient, but you have a coach trying to win a job. You have front office owner and TD who said that this is a playoff roster and those guys were going to be back and they were going to be huge players for them down the stretch. So, there's some impetus to win. There's some impetus to show that you were right. There's some, no one likes to admit they were wrong publicly or privately. So, there's pressures that those guys are going to be coming back and playing, and when it probably would be better to just shut them down, honestly, for the remainder of the season for these 9 games. It would probably be better for the long-term future of the organization to leave Giovanni, Alan Velasco, and Jesus Ferreira just out for the rest of the year and not bring them back.
Right. And I think that's why all of this is such mixed and confusing messaging, because if you're going to rush Velasco back and rush Jesus back because you're trying to win a playoff position, yet you're not willing to go out and find better players for the roster, what's the point to all of this? Because if you didn't do those things and one or both of those guys get hurt again because you rushed them back to try to win a playoff spot and you ruin them for 25.
Well, I think you remember last winter trying to get Jesus through without surgery led to this cascading list of injuries he's had this year. Like, none of them are like literally the same thing, but they're all sort of interconnected, in our humble opinion of how these things work. We've seen them time and time again. So, I honestly think it would be for the best to just shut all those guys down. Liam Frazier, maybe I'm not so worried about it, but even Delgado, like, the only reason I would try and bring Delgado back might be like that you have a loan ending and you probably have a buy you're trying to make a decision on. So maybe you want to see some more of him, but everybody else, I'd be like, just cut it, Speaking of Alan Velasco, by the way, is this the right time to bring up again that there's Boca's circled back again trying to get him?
Sure.
I know we brought it up a couple of weeks ago, but then there were some reports of like literal money. Like, I think it was 7.5 million and then like another 1.5 in incentives for 80% of his pass. So I'm like, that's where I was like, oh, maybe I would do that deal.
That would be the most Dan Hunt outcome of all time, which is you chose not to buy out his contract or put him on a season-ending IR so that you could go out and get a replacement player for the season, only to then sell him to, and he ends up never playing for the club again.
Yeah. But think about like coming off of an ACL, if you could, like what did we decide they paid for him? Like 8 or 9 million, right? So if you could get that money or a little bit more with incentives for 80% of his pass, I mean, I might be tempted when you got a guy coming off an ACL and you have no idea.
I agree.
Yeah.
But you did all that on the back of the decision, the active decision not to put him on season-ending IR so that you could bring in a replacement player.
Yeah, that would for sure go on the list.
That would absolutely go on the list.
Yeah. Oh, that would be rough.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah. Oh, well.
So are we saying 3rd or 4th tier organization?
It's 3rd degree. 3rd tier.
I don't know, man. It's hard to be. I mean, it's not hard. It's the Hunt family is the preeminent pro sports franchise ownership group in the country, maybe the world. I don't know. They've been doing this forever. They make money doing this. I don't. I just all of this in this particular instance is very frustrating and maddening that we've come every time it feels like they're getting somewhere with this thing, and then the wheels come off. I don't know. You know where I'm at on all this.
I mean, it's just par for the course, Peter. You've been here since '96.
Well, I mean,
it is what it is.
It is. I think back, there are a lot of people that listen to this podcast that don't remember what this was like when this team had no ownership. It was essentially the redheaded stepchild of the league. And do you remember those days, Buzz? You remember? I mean, that.
I do.
And when Lamar decided to rescue it, there was a lot of really goodwill and feel good this and feel good that, and it's and there have been good times with the Hunts, and there have been really, really good positive things they've done for this club. The academy stuff, building the stadium, for whatever you think about that. The 2016 season, going out and money whipping Colorado to bring in Oscar Pereira.
Yeah.
All of those things are really, really good elements and things that they should be very proud of. But
almost getting Diego Forlan,
who apparently has turned out to be a really good tennis player. Did you see that story?
No.
Yeah, he's like out on some sort of like amateur tour or something. I read the story the other day. I don't know. Anyway. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's just hard being a fan of this club on this particular day when you were kind of hoping maybe they'd surprise and delight us all by making some acquisitions, only to realize they've pretty much decided this season's a mail-in.
I think in the end, Peter, that's what it is. It's like that they thought they had a center back, and when that fell through, okay, don't panic. Just don't do something stupid. Just because we got 2 days left, or whatever it is, 2 weeks left. Let's just go get it this winter. We got an interim coach. We're going to BandAid this thing together. So it's not making it any worse.
So you think wait, I want to make sure that you and I'm understanding you correct. You think the fact that they tried to get a center back of quality and failed is good enough?
No, I don't. I think that you need to do better than that. But I think that once you get a guy and then he fails the medical, I will give credit for not panicking and doing something stupid.
But should they not have had a plan B?
Yes. No. They should have. They didn't do good enough, but then they turned around and didn't make it worse. Like they didn't turn around and go to plan Z and do something crazy and give a 4-year deal to a 35-year-old center book named Dan Crooke. I'm just saying that
37 actually.
Yeah, 37. Look, there's a bunch of names. You see these names in Europe all the time where some guy leaves a club and people are like, oh, that guy's available. Let's get him. Dude, he's 37. It's like, stop. It's not like he's 37 and Cristiano Ronaldo. And I don't even have a concrete example. I just have these guys that here, let's talk about Yaramendi for a minute, right? We love that guy, but they just did, when they brought him in, they did a 1.5-year deal, right? That was it. They didn't risk it with a 5-year deal on a 34-year-old. So in a way, yes, do better with your initial signing and that you find the right guy who's healthy and get a center back signed who's 26. Awesome. But it falls apart, doesn't pass a medical. Don't then do something moronic and sign Omar Gonzalez to a 6-year contract. That's all I'm saying. It's don't panic. That's good. That's fine. Don't make it worse.
And I have a question.
Yeah.
How much must Corsia suck?
He's not good. He keeps getting hurt all the time and it keeps setting him back. He's not. They're not playing him because he's not any good. They're not playing him because he's injured. It's both. Oh. He was a
winning signing combination.
Yeah.
And a guy that you signed twice.
Right. He's you notice that first contract was a 1-year thing and it's on the minimum.
And he was so good, we decided to bring him back a second time.
Well, you need a bottom of the body roster guy for $30,000 or whatever, $70,000, whatever it is, and he hasn't progressed any because he keeps getting hurt and it keeps setting him back. Now, I will admit the last 3 or 4 games at North Texas, he's looked a little better, but he doesn't look better than, say, Carl Sante has looked as a center back. And matter of fact, to me, Turner Humphrey and Mads Westergren and Nico Gordon, the 3 other center backs at North Texas, look, generally speaking, better. And they're all 3 younger. So, to me, Korch is out of time. He's 24 now, whereas Westergren is 22 and is the smartest of the four. Plays as a 6 even sometimes. He's the most complete soccer player, except he's half a step too slow. So, and Humphrey has the biggest upside. Now, we don't need to get into a deep North Texas conversation, but effectively, Korch is, in my opinion, is out of time. You know, a 70K bottom of the roster, 30th guy, who gives a crap? That's not what the problems are. It's just a dude. It's just a body. If that guy ever plays, something else has gone seriously wrong. He's a project player, right? It's like he's not even like a homegrown. He's like he's like these second and third round draft picks. Like if those guys are playing in MLS in their first year, you've done something seriously wrong. So like the only time he ever played was when they had some serious major medical problems across the back line. So who gives a shit about that guy? You know, the problems are your 35-year-old Omar Gonzalez. You know, at least they managed to keep that guy on the supplemental roster, not on the senior roster. You know, it's guys that are eating up massive amounts of contract and international spots on the senior roster that don't play because they're hurt all the time. Those are the problems.
Bah. All right. I thought this was going to be a 20-minute episode.
I know somebody went on a rant at the beginning about how shit franchise it was. You did.
I don't know.
It kicked off the dust. We had to get into it.
You can edit all that out.
No. It's all good stuff. That's why people pay us the big bucks, Peter.
Oh, wait, we're getting paid?
By that he means someone from FC Dallas left a deer carcass on his doorstep.
Yeah, I had a dead fish on the hood of my car the other day. That's a LA wiretapping Hollywood joke, if anyone missed that case.
I was going to say, you don't live near a body of water for that to happen.
No. Do you remember that? No, never mind. That's it's like a 10-year-old thing now, but I'm old.
Sorry. All right. Anything else we need to rant and pout and whine about?
Well, as always, I'll tell you, the North Texas Soccer Club is fantastic. They're better than almost everybody else in the league. You should go watch it play. Their coaching staff's done a great job this year. There's about 10 or 12 dudes that have made progression, so they're fun to watch. And then also, I need to give a shout out to Caroline Swan. I've mentioned her before. She was she was recently a part of the US U15 girls team that went down to the CONCACAF championships, and she was named the best player of that tournament, the MVP, the golden ball they get for that. So Caroline Swan, she plays for the DKSC boys ECNL team, which is remarkable. She's one of their starters for them. So that's incredible. She's a real player. I believe she's a 6 usually, but a really good player. Caroline Swan. Her brother plays for FC Dallas. Caleb Swan.
Something cool that I stumbled across today. I was doing some kick around research on the Premier League season, and I'm writing something for Bob Sturm's blog. And I was looking at the Brentford roster, and lo and behold, listed under goalkeepers is Julian Eystone on the Premier League team. And he's listed as the 5th goalkeeper. And there under with his name is a silhouette because they don't have a picture of him yet. And so I manipulated it to make it look more accurate where his head is off the screen.
Oh, you did that?
Yeah,
that was really funny.
I did that, yeah. But I just thought it was really cool to see Julian Eystone listed as on the Premier League roster for Brentford. I thought that was really cool.
Super cool. Yeah.
Yes. All right. There we go. There's that. And then it appears that we are nigh close to the kickoff of the first professional women's season here. Is it this weekend, Dan?
It is this weekend on Sunday. They kick off the season in Tampa against, I don't remember what the Tampa team's called now. Tampa Bay Sun.
Yeah.
5:30 p.m. kickoff on Peacock.
And is it on Saturday or Sunday?
It is on Sunday.
Okay. Now, Dallas has something to prove and get some revenge because I saw that in the league vote for the best club logo, Tampa beat Dallas in a public vote. So I hope they kick their ass.
Tampa Sun or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Their crest's really nice. And that's how we end.
Thought you were going to stick up for the pregnant Pegasus.
I like the way they use it. I still don't really like it, but
I've really warmed up to it. Its quirky nature has won me over, and I think I might buy a shirt with it on it, especially the shirt that has the giant version of it on it. I think that actually kind of looks cool.
You should get the jacket with the furry one.
There's a jacket with a furry one? Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. All right. Well, that'll be fun. We'll see what they roll out on Sunday on Peacock.
Well, in the nature of help wanted, we're going to do our best to cover that team. But if anyone out there considers themselves to be a female soccer expert, particularly if they are female persuasion themselves,
God, that would be
because I think
great.
that would be a good matchup. I'd love to talk to you. I have 1 or 2 people that are going to help us. I think Dan's going to do a lot of it too, but I'd prefer to have an appropriate voice with expertise in that area to help us. I have a photographer ready to go lined up. So, we're going to try and treat it's Division 1. We're going to try and treat it as seriously as we can. Obviously FC Dallas remains the priority, but we do want to give it respect.
If somebody is listening to this, either they themselves or they know somebody that is a student that would be following the club, has an interest in writing, anything like that. This is a really, really good opportunity Buzz has available for somebody to really learn on the fly and get some access and stuff. So good FC Dallas Curious fan. Just keep that in the back of your mind if you stumble across some kid that you think might be a good fit for that.
Plus, bonus, you can hang out with me and get stuck in an elevator and then bang your head on the really low ceilings at the Cotton Bowl.
Hang out with Dan Crooke is a bonus for sure. No doubt about it. You can hide stuff in his beard.
Got the summer trim going on. So,
do you?
Oh, nice.
I do, yeah.
Is Babyface Dan back?
Oh, God, no. That just look weird now.
Okay. All right. You are cute when you're all shaved up, when you're all clean-faced.
I'm at a loss for words.
Also, a little later this month, or maybe the very first big part of next month, I'm going to have my academy rosters again, as usual. I am efforting getting the official lists, but I'll be going through those with who to watch. And there's been a shakeup in the age brackets and the coaching staffs and that kind of thing. So if you're into that jam, I'll have that for you soon.
All right. Well, Dan, thank you as always, sir. Good reporting on the center back news.
Good, solid rant on the state of the organization.
I just
love it.
I just love to whine and complain.
When you're right, you're right.
Thank you. And Buzz?
Yes, sir. One tiny little thing. If you're interested in the Logan shirt without mentioning what that is, it's still there. Just go look for it.
You just love getting phone calls from lawyers, don't you?
Nope. It's still around.
Why would you even stick a fork in that hole, Buzz?
I just don't know what the controversy is over a T-shirt commemorating Boston Logan Airport.
Yeah. It's actually about the Logan's Run movie, which is a really great movie from the 80s.
So wrong.
Yep. So good.
Okay.
Wait till you see the new Curious shirt I got coming.
What?
Are you curious about it?
Teaser. I'll show you guys.
So I got a question for you. I'm going to run a product idea by you guys.
Okay.
Because somebody asked me this question the other day. Somebody asked me about the origins of where did Get Stuck In and When You're 50s come from? And I told them the story.
Right.
And somebody said to me, do you have that on a shirt?
You should.
And I was like, no, I don't. And I thought that actually, if that was on a shirt, would anybody actually buy that?
Sure, dude. The kick around's got a way bigger reach than Third Degree has.
Well, I know, but would anybody buy a shirt that has that on it? Like, there are times where I regret ever letting that fall out of my mouth because people on occasion will walk up to me and say it, and I'm like, I don't know what to do now.
Yeah. Well, you just slap their hand and go, all right.
Yeah, high five.
Throw a kick around logo. It's your tagline. Throw a kick around logo on it. People buy that. Of course they would.
You think? All right. Maybe I'll get somebody to put some thought into the design of it.
Make that cheddar.
Yeah.
What'd you say, Dan?
Make that cheddar.
Make sure what?
Make that cheddar, dude.
Oh, make that cheddar. Oh, sorry. You were talking like a Gen Z. I didn't understand what you were saying.
You're so out of it.
I am. I'm old.
Yeah.
All right, boys. Well, somehow we managed to crank out, I don't know how many, too many minutes of that. And I hope everybody understands it's okay to be angry and pouty about the whole thing. At least that's what I'm telling you. So.
Yeah, you're the paying customer. Be as pouty and angry as you want.
Well, I don't pay for anything. I just watch.
Well, not you. I mean, the fans.
Yeah.
Out there that want to be pouty.
Right. Excellent. Okay.
Be demanding. It's your team.
Yeah. Get out there and say something.
Yeah. Third Degree the Podcast is brought to you by the Lindstrom Law Firm. For wills, trusts, probate, and business law, call 469-515-2559. That's 469-515-2559. Or visit lindstromlawfirm.com for a free consultation.
Are we doing this again next week?
Yeah, of course.
Excellent. All right. Well, we'll talk to everybody then. Thank you, FC Dallas Curious fan. We love and adore you. And we're here standing with you proudly side by side as we watch the rest of the season dwindle into nothingness. We'll talk to you next week on an episode of Third Degree of the Podcast.
Jesus wept.
Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.